recording now, and we're totally gonna pretend like I didn't like record almost 30 minutes of almost nothing.
Yes, definitely the first time we were talking about this.
First time we've been here.
So Ame, what are we talking about?
A little bit of everything. We're talking about One D&D. We're talking about our times or previous editions.
Which I definitely haven't already told you about.
Totally not. Side tangent. You're a Star Wars guy too, right? Or no?
Role playing game or just?
Oh, just in general movies.
Oh yeah.
Great. We did a Kenobi review. Recorded like all 7 episodes. About 3.5 hours long with this podcast, and found out my mic was off at the very end.
Oh, God. I'm going to refrain from asking you your opinions on that, because then it's just going to spiral into a full different...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to refrain very hard, but I'm going to do it. You'll find I'm a very opinionated individual when you get me going.
I try to be. But do you mind giving her a quick recap of your thoughts on 4 and 3?
No, not at all. The definitely first time run through that for some reason is getting condensed down for no particular reason at all. Definitely not loss of recording. Definitely not. Okay, 4E. Problems. Let's run through it. Gameplay, not super engaging with how it was set up. The classes, not unique enough between the like roles themselves. Too many stat buffs. It's like everybody's a bard on steroids. You're giving out dice. You're having dice taken away. You have to remember so much. It's too hard to keep track of everything. It's not really fun.
And 3.
3.5 or 3.
I always kind of put them hand in hand, but actually, good question. What is the differences between 3 and 3.5?
When they came out with 3.0, there were some, like, it was, like, a little too much, even then. There were skills that they, like, pared down. They got rid of some redundant skills. That's kind of the big thing. It was fixing up some stuff. They fixed up one of the classes as well. I don't remember which, but it was basically just kind of a hot fix. Back in the time before the internet made those things easier, so then they had to slap out a 0.5 edition.
What you call easier, I just call convenient. But that said, okay, so it's just streamlined the experience.
Yeah, as streamlined as 3.5 was.
As you mentioned, the prestige classes, yeah.
Yeah, of which you know, I'll run down that part because it's particularly fun. I want to play a blackguard. Okay, you need 5 levels of sneak, which is dexterity based. In order to, you have to have a base dexterity class to get the bonus for that, to be able to, you know, actually not have to spend 2 points every time you want to take a level in that. Mm-hmm. All right, so we need dexterity. Oh, but the feat that you need, or the multiple feats that you need, the cleave and the power attack and such, are strength based. So you got to make sure your strength is at least high enough. Oh boy. So you get both of those. Oh, guess what? All the spells that you cast are charisma based. Oh, fun.
And then again, we compare that to multi-classing with 5e, which is, from the comparison of those two, far simpler.
Oh yeah, I mean, with multi-classing in 5e, I'll just be like, okay, what are the primary stats for these two? Do they overlap? No. Then those need to be my primary stats, and I'll take a hit to Constitution or Dex or whatever.
I do feel personally like there's more nuance to it. I mean, again, I'm looking at the poor player in my current campaign who's doing a Barbarian Wizard combo. Like, there's certain things you don't really want to do. But it just comes from, like, experimenting and looking at how things interact with one another. But
yes.
But I guess I'll throw this in too. Issue I almost kind of have with multi-classing in 5e is I feel like there are certain obvious winners in that category. For instance, you're gonna always look at fighter and go, all right, 2 levels of fighter, great. No matter what class I'm playing, it's just fun.
Yeah, yeah. I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with that though, because it's more liberating than restricting in the way that 3.5 was, where it's like these are the absolute hard, you have to have this in order to play this specific elite spec. Whereas in D&D, it's like the levels of fighter are kind of ubiquitously nice, and you can, kind of play around with that for making builds.
I will say, and feel free to give me your opinion on this, but to me, one thing I always kind of had a problem with was it always seemed like there were some definite do this type scenarios I would have when I play 5e. Again, take races, for instance, variant human, where you just go, that gives me a feat. I'm going to pick that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It was even more aggressive in 3.5 because, oh boy, there was... where to even start with races in 3.5? For one, you had negatives in stats. I mean, we used to in 5e. They got rid of that, but there were a lot more. There were... what would they even call them? Certain race... you could take levels in your race for certain races.
Okay.
And this would give you... essentially, the idea was... there were certain like racial abilities that were considered too powerful to have just right off the bat, so you'd have to like actually put levels into it. This is how they kind of handled like really powerful races being playable. It's like, okay, you have to like unlock that potential.
We do still have quite a few races that you get this ability when you play it. When this race hits level 5, you get this ability when you hit level 3. Like that currently?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, and that is the much like easier, like more sensical version of how to do that. Is just, hey, you get these things at level 3 instead of you have to put a whole level into your race.
Oh.
Yeah, that's what I mean by that. Like it's not like you get that as you level up. It's you, instead of leveling up your fighter, you level up elf.
As someone who like knew very little about 3.0, my go-to thoughts I always had with it when people just summed it up to me was, oh cool, it was D&D but Dark Souls. And you're kind of stirring me more down that path. Where it just kind of seemed like the game itself was trying to be more punishing a bit, to kind of add more of a challenge to it.
Yeah.
Go for it.
I was just gonna say there were they had like level adjustment as a thing as well, right? I'm hoping that like I didn't get it mixed up and that these aren't the same thing, but
they'll let us know.
Level adjustment was this really weird thing where so you could play as something like a straight up Rakshasa or Ogre Mage or Troll or Gargoyle or Giant. But like taking a Giant for an example, Giant has level adjustment +6. What does this mean? Well, you take that number and you add it to the hit dice, including class levels, to get effective character level. Effective character level affects the experience the character earns and the experience the character must have before gaining a new level. So essentially, you could start the campaign as a stone giant, but you would be getting almost no XP compared to your fellow party members that were starting as, the quote-unquote traditional races. And it would be that way for a very long time. So you just, you wouldn't be able to level up until like the rest of your party hit like level 6 or 7.
Oh God.
Because the idea was you were so strong right off the bat that you weren't allowed to level up, which I think is a really not great system.
Mm-hmm. So there's a saying that I'm totally stealing from Incredibles, which was, when everyone's special, no one's special.
No one's.
And to me, when Tasha's came out for 5e, and they made it for you can put your stats wherever you want it for every race, it kind of gave me mixed feelings at first, where I wasn't too sure if I was okay. I was glad the negatives were gone, because to me, knowing that you want to play a certain race and having downfalls to it, or tremendous detrimental downfalls like ability score minuses, hurts a lot. But to me, it did kind of make the races more unique. And I gotta ask, how do you feel about that? How about that change specifically?
I agree, but it's more from a stance of I think that the Tasha's changes were too radical.
Oh, okay. Smart.
In regards of like being able to just like pass the points out in general. And obviously this is going to kind of tie into the One D&D discussion and certain things I have to feel about that, but I'm torn, because on one hand I like the ability that you can just put your points into whatever you want, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of it's like you said, though, if everyone's special, no one is. You could apply that on the flip side, where it's like, well, not everybody gets to pick this stuff. You're gonna see very similar, picks. Mm-hmm. But the problem is that's always going to happen.
But this also goes to what I said in the previous recording that may or may not exist, where the options beforehand always felt so streamlined to make people almost go, Variant Human's the best thing here, why would I pick something different? Or this sub for this class is so much, Twilight Cleric is so good compared to the other clerics, why would I pick another cleric? It's like, you see those things like that it almost kind of forces itself back into the same problem anyway.
Yeah, and I mean, the ultimate end here that the problem is what are you trying to get out of the game? Are you trying to make the most broken build possible? Because if so, you're going to be, playing a lot of the same. You're going to be making these very specific choices with the character that you play, and you're going to, you're going to be optimal. I guess kind of the problem with the Tasha's thing is it's trying to fix something for a group of people that it's not going to work for, right? Because the idea is, oh look, you can play whatever race you want now, because there's no stats tied to it anymore, and it's like, cool. I'm still just gonna play Variant Human.
Now, this is gonna be the part where I wish I had a scripted. I got to be very careful on my wordings for it. But when Tasha was coming out, the big issues people had was, again, that thought process of, well, I can never see myself inside the game, or I can never see like my own character the way that portrays me inside this setting. So do you feel like giving people the option to go, here now you can do your character the way you want to better represent yourself, do you feel like that was a push in the right direction? Do you feel like they tuned it way too much? Or
I absolutely think it was a push in the right direction. I think that the Tasha's way was too extreme, but I think that the One D&D way that they're proposing is just right. Mm-hmm. Because I myself agree with that. I really like seeing, outside, separate of the, people wanting to, see themselves in characters and such. I like seeing weird stuff at the table. I mean, the D&D characters that have stuck in my mind through the years, Minsk and Boo, from Baldur's Gate. The
That's
ranger who basically fights like he's a fighter, and his companion isn't like a friggin' stereotypical Drit style panther or something. It's a friggin' hamster.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. In Baldur's, I mean, in Neverwinter Nights, you have a companion called Deacon, who's a little kobold, but he's a bard, and he sings terribly. These things are the things that I remember. I don't remember generic min-maxed human or dragonborn or orc or whatever number 573. I picked this because of the stat bonus.
Mm.
For me, I've always been more of a story guy, right?
Yeah.
I've always put story first. In my opinion, the game is a vehicle for telling stories.
I think that's well said.
Wow. There is a place for min-maxing. I don't hate min-maxers. It doesn't super bug me. Only if it's hurting the experience of the other players at the table.
For myself, to kind of double over what you said too, it's like when it comes to min-maxers, to me, if that's how you have fun, it's how you have fun. But to me, when this comes with anything you do with your character, don't make it to the detriment of everybody else around you. Don't try to like ruin the fun for people.
Yes, and kind of what I was trying to get across earlier when I was talking about the Tasha stuff is, I think the problem that the initial thing there is it's trying to get, it's like, okay, look, we're gonna unhinge it so that min-maxers aren't it's not as you have more choices. They're still gonna pick the best choice though.
Mm-hmm.
The min-maxers are always gonna pick what's best, so don't change stuff for those people. Don't try to eliminate that. The thought process should be around what is going to best make the experience the best.
I won't.
Which is why.
Go
ahead.
Oh no, you're fine. Continue.
Which is why I like the newer approach.
I won't extra thing on Tasha's. Well, with min-maxers using Tasha specifically, I won't go too deep into my thoughts on this because this is a whole nother tangent / rant by itself. But it does bother me where I see certain things like the custom origin option for your race and the option of doing blind sight for fighting style for your characters too, where it's meant to try to be inclusive for, hey, if you want to make your character blind, you can do this, or hey, if you really have like a horned tiefling half elf you want to try to do, you could just do that using this. The fact that those options by itself is so good, everybody just go, yeah, no, my character's like that too.
Yeah, that specifically is more the stuff that I have the problem with, where I think they went too far. The decoupling of the ability scores is one thing, but yeah, the variant options are like a bit too good.
Too heavy-handed, yeah.
It's like, I understand, like you said, I understand the inclusivity attempt, but it's the problem of you need to strike a balance there between giving people. Because, as you said, blind sight is very powerful in this game.
Yeah.
It's very good. It was in 3.5 as well. I'd argue maybe even more so to a certain degree.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's one of those things where it definitely had some far-reaching consequences.
While we're on the topic still, I do think in my mind, at least on top of my head for everything I know for it, I think the thing they did the best was the prosthetics. Which I know is an odd thing to point out, but the idea of, hey, you have these magical limbs you can put on that don't count to attunement, that basically lets your character, if you want to make them handicapped, they can still function like a normal character. That was fantastic to me.
Yeah. I love all that stuff like that, and it's because I just game it, make it a system, in the same way that you did for the tattoos and stuff.
Yeah,
and that's going to be my continued theme, especially as we go into talking about the One D&D stuff specifically, is just make it fun. make it cool and fun, but not, something that can be exploited.
My thoughts exactly.
Which I think kind of leads us into the One D&D stuff.
All right, let's hop on into it. So they announced One D&D. They have put out a PDF for people to look at. I gone through it a couple times to kind of really did my thoughts on a whole nother channel. I imagine you looked all the way through it too, huh?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm sure I don't know it quite as well as you do, but I
was going to say the exact opposite.
I've definitely given it some look. I have opinions, as a person does.
Considering I'm more interested in your opinions on it as somebody who's been through all the other different editions versus mine, because before we hop into this, my one last thing I kind of want to ask involving 5e going into 6e or going into 1D&D, I should say. One, do you think this is going in the right direction? Do you think 1D&D is kind of what you want D&D to evolve into?
Overall, with having looked through this, my gripes aside, I would say absolutely this is the direction that I would like to see stuff moving in.
Okay.
And I'll buttress that argument as we go through the document about stuff that I specifically see that I really like.
And I want to ask one last question on the 5e side, just an important one, because you've been playing it honestly longer than I have. So when it comes to 5e, I gotta ask, what all specific issues do you have with it that you hope get fixed going into our next quote-unquote edition?
Honestly, from my own play group, I think that skills, the stuff that you get from your particular skill sets, like, you get gaming equipment and you tools and all of that, and obviously this is something that we're going to be talking about because they talk about it in this document. But I wish that stuff mattered more. I wish that those things actually contributed to a farther degree. I feel like in my own personal group, medicine doesn't really matter because we always have somebody that's just going to heal somebody right up.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like with 5e, there's just a lot of parts of it that I want to be more involved that don't end up being as involved.
I have to admit, it's so interesting hearing, because would you consider yourself more of a player or a DM?
I'd consider myself more of a player, but I've done both. I try to, and like, a lot of that is hard because having played with, the same group, it's kind of like you're going to fall into one particular play style because, same dungeon master. So that might just be a problem with my group as opposed to a problem with D&D as a whole. And I think that's the kind of the thing with making this is you're going to have people that have problems that other people don't have.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of the tightrope balance of trying to look at what the vast majority of people have an issue with and addressing that before anything else.
Agreed. Because with myself, would you mind hearing a couple of my wish list changes I had? I had a couple.
No, absolutely not. The host of this show giving their opinion, I refuse. No. Go ahead, please.
I actually tried to avoid it.
You're not getting out of this one.
But, I mean, go ahead and tell me your thoughts on it, like, as I say it. One thing I had on top of my list, I wanted short rest removed.
Yeah, I can definitely see that, especially in regards to stuff like Warlock.
Oh my goodness, for stuff like Warlock. But to me, it always seemed odd, the simple thought process of getting multiple different ability features and traits off of short rest recharge, when we have a perfectly fine proficiency bonus that you can just tie these abilities to and just add them to the long rest.
Yeah, you know what? And I didn't really think about it until you brought it up, but that is also a problem that I have with 5e is, and I guess this kind of extends to like, more than just 5e, but so much of this game is built around rests.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically sleeping simulator. It's like, oh god, we got to make sure that we divvy out our proper like combat so that we can make sure to get the rest time, because you can only rest like, it's certain, you only get like a certain period of time and you can do the rests and everything, and it's just, yeah.
Camping simulator. It's definitely something that's gone through my mind a few times. I wanted to ask too, since we're still on 5e a little longer, how did you feel about high level player? Have you ever done any like level 15 plus?
I got to do a little bit. I had one campaign where I did get to play a higher level character. It was fun. Okay. It made me really sad to go back to playing at lower levels.
So for myself, I've always felt like one major thing I always call 5th edition is it's a power fantasy. It really can turn into Dynasty Warriors if you wanted to. And for better or worse is cool, but if you're somebody who wants to have like a lot of narrative tension and some espionage, even like a mystery, to me it seems like you're doing that at low levels, because once you bring somebody in that's level 15, 16, heavens forbid 20, that's not going to happen.
You kind of just start murder hoboing because you're so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely get that. And I guess I should be more specific. When I say it's fun, I mean, yeah, it's the power fantasy. I have so much stuff I'm doing at that point. I was playing a fighter,
Mm-hmm.
I get, finally I get 3 attacks. I have, actual traits I can be using. I have cool artifacts that I've claimed.
I mean, nothing feels better than being a Hexblade Warlock with a Paladin multi-class and dropping 30 D8s on a table when you crit somebody. Like, there's a lot of love to it. And I do actually feel like there's some kind of balance that can be found. And that's something I hope happens with One D&D. As it currently stands, most campaigns, I notice, generally don't go past level 13, 14.
No, not at all.
And combine that with the fact that, as you said, your campaigns, generally speaking, start around level 5. When you look at those two things together, it's like, why is it the early level play and the dream for the players, the in-game sections of it, that's just non-existent? Like, why does that have to not be there to enjoy the game?
Part of me almost thinks that there might be a couple reasons. One, it's kind of narratively weird to start so late. I'd argue that a good game master can formulate a reason, but the other problem is maybe like just monsters. Maybe there's just not a good enough variety at certain like level ranges to make it as interesting as it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
As I mean, if everything at a higher level is of a certain flavor, like say, this solo big strong monster, you can only do so much with that narratively.
I do feel like that comes down to the dungeon master a little bit. It comes down to how flavorful they can be with it. But even still, as you said, like at the end of the day, you still have the same stat blocks with the same health pool and things that you're looking at.
Yeah. Let me give you an example. Let's say that your campaign is centered around a goblin invasion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even taking all hobgoblins and bugbears into account, what's like the highest stat block there? It ain't very high.
Maybe a CR6.
Yeah, if you're really stretching. Yeah, like maybe like the Hobgoblin Devastator or something is like, one of the strongest I can think of.
Maybe 86 HP.
Yeah. I mean, I have books. They are third-party books The Dungeon Masters, or the Monster Manual Expanded is what the series is called.
Mm-hmm.
Love those books to death. They kind of rectify that problem. They add some new monsters, but the primary thing they do is they take existing monsters and they give them a lot more variant stat blocks at a lot higher CRs. And sometimes the opposite. Sometimes it'll take high-level monsters and have like a baby or young version or something that'll be of a lower CR. I would want to see that in 1D&D. I want to see more of like a singular monster with more variants in the stat blocks. That's something they did in 4th, actually. In 4th, there were a lot of monsters that have multiple variants, and they kind of trimmed that back in 5e because I think they were trying to go more the nostalgia route of like there's one monster and that monster is the monster. Like instead of there being 8 varieties of Beholder, there is the Beholder. Except I... go ahead.
Oh, but at the same time, you also have dragons.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's kind of the problem, is I think that was misplaced. I don't think the problem with 4E was that it was diluting the uniqueness of the monster type. A Beholder is a Beholder, no matter what type it is, you know? Mm-hmm. But having that, like, variance in the stat blocks isn't bad. It's going to let your players actually maybe experience fighting some creatures that they might not normally at challenge levels that they might not be expecting.
I love that, especially as somebody who loves drawing dragons at my level 3 party.
But to be fair, this document is not about monsters.
Oh yeah, it is about races. And that is what we're going to hop into. So, we have a lot of player information. And I think we're just going to take it bit by bit. I will open up by saying, I was curious when they mentioned backgrounds being more evolved. Because as it currently stands, to me, the backgrounds are just a nice little flavor to get an extra skill proficiency or to get an extra language. And that's how it's been for a long time. I think... Oh, I guess we're going to hop down straight to backgrounds. I do think actually having...
We'll come back. We'll come back to the races. We'll talk about backgrounds because I also want to talk about backgrounds. So we'll skip ahead a bit.
We'll boomerang back. But having actual backgrounds with different traits that goes to your character tied to it in different feats, I think was a fantastic idea just to kind of bring that system together as a whole. But what's your thoughts on it?
100% agree. I looked at this and kind of face palmed. I'm like, why didn't I think of this? Tying ability score to background is genius. It fixes all of the story problems and the, you know, problems that people had with like race being tied to like, you know, ability. Mm-hmm. And it's in a way that makes total sense. If you worked as a gladiator, you're going to be strong. It goes hand in hand, you know? Mm-hmm. Now, with that said, there are some things, one thing in particular that I think is absolutely nonsense, stupid, and actually hinders the game.
Go for
it. Why is there a language tied to this? Why? And that might not seem like a big deal, but let me spin this in a way of why I think this is very bad, right? Mm-hmm. Artisan, you get the language Gnomish. What's the justification? As part of your studies, you picked up Gnomish, the tongue from which so many of the artisan terms of art are derived. All right, what if in my world it was goblins that invented those?
You actually are already jumping into one of the first questions I was going to ask you involving all this. But do you feel, as we talked about with the custom origin system, with the races back in 5e having the stats you choose to give to the races you want, do you feel like that should have been brought here for the different backgrounds?
I mean, it kind of is. They have the build your background section. You can just make your own background.
which I think is it's nice, but I almost, to me, feel like you essentially recreated a problem we were dealing with, which is, well, if I really want to be that acolyte, but I think the scores are wrong, it's just better for me to make my own background and put the language or the scores where I want it.
And that's the problem, because they even say in the build your background, oh, you could just swap out the language. But I agree. I think as great as the build your background thing is, it's like I feel like everybody's just gonna do that instead, and then it's just Natasha's roles.
One common thing I've already been hearing is different DMs mentioning, well, I'm just going to let my player change the feat that comes with the background. Like, yeah, they get that, but maybe they want something else instead.
Yeah, it's already when you put it like that, it's kind of already coming apart at the seams, isn't it?
A little bit. I do think I'm trying to hold up before we hop into the feat section. But I do think that giving players a bit more say, I think it should be one of the two things. Either we give more say into the different options that they have there. Like, take Urchin. Maybe instead of saying you get your sign language from on ignore that for now. And things like that. Instead, you just said, like, Meadows, you had this or that. Your artesian. What if we said we had gnome or orcish, or we said we had like 2 different options to play between instead of just one? You're locked into this.
Yeah, the problem with that is, here's why I like the sample backgrounds, right?
Mm-hmm.
The sample backgrounds are very generic, as they should be.
Yes.
It's just enough to give you a character hook, but not enough to place it in one particular setting, except the language part. If you got rid of language from this, I would literally have no problem with it whatsoever.
It's interesting because in my mind, I'm on like the extreme nuclear option of this, which is I would have just completely taken out the build your background.
Well, no, I agree. I think, like, get rid of the build your background thing and just have the backgrounds. Make sure there's a bunch, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then don't have a language tied to it. And just keep it, everything else is the same. Ability score the same, skill proficiency the same, tool proficiency the same, and the feat. Keep that all the same. Just don't have a language. Because here's my other problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I first was going through this, I'm like, oh, well then because of this, you must not get to pick your second language anymore. No, you do.
Yeah.
Everybody's trilingual now. And I'm like, what? No, just don't have a language tied to the background and let people pick their second language like before.
Oh, that is an interesting thought for this. That really is.
I mean, I guess your argument could be you're an adventurer, so you've picked up other languages, but it's just keep them as generic as possible. Let people make their own stories around it.
So, with me, I almost, like, everything you're saying, I feel exactly the same for. Except it's on the feat section. It's so interesting to hear, like, the contrast of the two. Because almost in my mind, I feel like having that specific feat, knowing that that feat specifically gives you something. Let's say if you wanted to be a person of the church, like an acolyte, but you're thinking about playing a barbarian or something. Now your feat that you're cutting with your background is completely useless to you. At least with the language, I can see, even though I feel like it gives you too much of a straight, narrow path for your character you're making, I do feel like the language is a nice addition versus the feat where I can actually see that being a subtraction from the character.
I want to look at Magic Initiative.
Divine, which we're going to also have to talk about. It is, you have learned the basics of a particular magical tradition. Choose one spell list. You gain the following benefits related to that choice. 2 cantrips, And
and
a
a
first
first
level
level
spell.
and you get to choose if it's intelligence, wisdom, or charisma as the spellcasting. You see, I don't think that's useless for barbarian. I think that's great, honestly, and I think that's vague enough that it could be useful for almost anybody that's taking it.
For a class that can't cast spells when it's raging?
Fair. But that's the problem, isn't it? Because we don't have the class part of this document, you don't know if that's even true anymore.
Which is also true.
That's my other problem with all of this is, and I see this all the time, people are already picking this apart using the current classes. And I'm like, okay, but here's the problem. We don't even know if that's going to be true. That's kind, yeah. But, with current barbarian, you're right. But maybe they'll change that. But the problem is we're in a world of ifs, ums, and maybes.
Well, now I have to ask, do you think they should have added the classes with this?
I 100% think they should have, because we're having the problem we have right now where people are scrutinizing this justifiably based on what the classes that we already have and how those work. If those are something that's going to be changed, which I'm pretty sure they are to a certain degree, that should be here. Otherwise, you're going to be getting a lot of feedback that you can't use.
But I almost think to myself that they would have been giving like an information overload, especially since all these things are things they expect to change. So, would adding another 10 pages for classes?
I think we should have got classes first.
Yes, but
because I feel like if we got classes first, then we wouldn't be having any of these problems.
What I wonder if their fear of doing that. I'm gonna be honest. My own opinion, or my own guess, I feel like classes are gonna be one of the last things we get to see, like probably late 2023.
Probably, yeah, because that definitely seems like something that's going to take a lot of designing around.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of my thought process too, because I feel like no matter what you do with classes, once that come out right now, those are the arguments are going to be, well, why isn't XYZ class here? Why isn't XYZ working like this? Why?
I'm mad that they've even shown this to us, in all honesty, because I remember like when 5e came out, they had like the playtest stuff that they did, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that was like 5e. That would like obviously you didn't get like material, but you got like the system. You got the system and got to play that. This is just a part of a system that isn't done yet.
Hearing you say that, keep going.
And the problem with that, like I said, is because it's a part of a system that isn't done yet, people are gonna view it through the lens of the system that is done.
I wish there was enough information here to run a level 1 campaign.
Yes. 100%.
Just
because otherwise it's too much speculation.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you this. Why do you think they kind of released it this way? What is your guesses behind that?
One is to generate hype, as always, with anything that you do, like with something like this. The second is feedback. They've shown with the amount of friggin' surveys they send out, they genuinely want to hear people's feedback on stuff like this. Which, like I said, is why I'm kind of mad, because it's like you're going to be getting a bunch of feedback that, you might already know is a problem. Might not even be something that you were planning around.
Almost making a self-fulfilling prophecy a little bit.
Yeah. Why would I want to play a barbarian and take cultist if I get magic initiate arcane and I can't cast during berserk, and then the person at Wizards is screaming behind their computer, I can't tell them that you can cast spells on berserk now. Or whatever.
To be fair, I was being hyperbolical, but still.
I mean, it's good though, because you did raise a good point. Yeah. I was like, well, no, the spells are good, but you're like, oh, but you can't cast. It's like, yeah, in current incarnation, you can't. So yeah, it would be worse.
But for the most part, besides all that, how you feel with everything else going into it? Equipment, having a little flair for your backstory.
I mean, that's kind of how backgrounds were already. Um, so good. I like it. I like the backgrounds playing a role. Like I said earlier, with my whole I love cool stories, I want to see that character. I want to see the barbarian with an acolyte background. That sounds incredibly fascinating, and like it's great role play setup.
Mm-hmm.
That's like you brought up. That's why I think you're right about the don't let players build their own background, because
You lose
have
that.
have a bunch of generic backgrounds, force them to pick and make them be creative.
Mm-hmm.
Let the min maxers always play the optimal choice, and let the people that want to be a bit more creative put some thought into some wacky characters.
I try to brain things with my examples, I promise. No matter how far out they sound. But in the 16-bit era, when people did music, the music itself was always so limited on what they could do. And yet, despite having access to all the same instruments, you have so many classic things that stick in your head, like the Mario Bros, the Pac-Man, etc. And I feel for myself, having those options laid out before you to say, these are your choices, make these choices, you have no other leeway in this, I think almost would have helped out more.
Yes, I agree. D&D is just a vehicle for this. It's all made up.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the point, is it's like exactly as you said. If you give the player too much freedom, then you're not giving them enough direction.
Mm-hmm.
By putting people within the confines of choice, that is where stuff might end up shining through. Like you said, with the music, it didn't matter that the choices were limited. It was based on the creativity of the individual.
Mm-hmm.
Now the key is to make sure that the choices aren't utter crap. Yeah. Which they don't seem to be. Like
so
the stuff you get from these, even the feats are, outside of the obvious things you pointed out, with certain classes maybe not being able to make use of it all the time. They're good feats. They're good feats to start with.
Mm-hmm.
And they have multiple uses that make them good for multiple types of characters, which is the key.
Now, a common argument that's been going on online, feel free to get your thoughts to it, is that the backgrounds here are just the same exact rollies and things we always had, just players need to look at it good enough with some extra flair now.
Yeah, but I'm fine with that, because like I said, I don't think enough attention was ever paid to the backgrounds, and I like that they're becoming more important.
Okay.
I like that fact. I think that's a great thing. Because I think background is an opportunity to really delve into the story of your character, and it always felt like an afterthought in 5e.
Mm-hmm. Oh, but that's roughly all I have on background, unless you have something else you want to say about it.
Nah, I pointed out my big foible with it already, so.
You heard mine. Then let's hop into the races. I'm trying my best to get those feats for last.
I know you want to talk about them.
Just shaking in my seat. How did you feel about the race changes?
I'm gonna be honest. I skipped human because humans are boring. I shouldn't have, but I saw Ardling and was like, "Oh, what's this?" and just immediately scrolled past human. So I guess I should take a sec to actually look at human and compare it.
How dare you skip your own kind?
I remember talking with another one of my friends about the getting inspiration thing.
Mm.
That's that obviously would be more problematic if they didn't change how inspiration worked. That once again, that would have been a lot scarier if we didn't have the context. I'm glad we had the context. Can't say the same thing about how the feats are going to interact with the classes.
Now, okay, I have to ask this. This is going entirely off memory. I don't have like any of my books or nothing in front of me. But the inspiration was working back in 5e. It was essentially if you had it, you can give yourself advantage on a roll, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's.
But
you know what? Let's not leave it up to being wrong. Let's just look it up. I'm not gonna.
I let the comment sections decide on if I'm right or wrong. But I think, again, this is me going off memory while you look this up. I think it was just the only issue that came with inspiration was you're at the mercy of your DM whether or not you were getting it.
And let me tell you something. I play with a DM that I don't think remembers that inspiration is a thing. Because I have never, ever, ever once gotten inspiration. No one has. It just isn't a thing in the campaign. So I like that there are mechanical ways to just get it now.
Mm.
I do like that because if it's going to be a mechanic,
it's nice to know it's there.
Yeah, really. And it's cool that is becoming humans' big claim to fame as opposed to
having a feat
and getting to pick all your stats and everything.
When it comes, so I'll talk about human a bit just before we hop into art link. We're both gonna have a lot to say with that one. When it comes to it, one of the big issues I would say people would mention with humans is the fact that they're not unique when you look at it in a fantasy sense, especially when you compare it to elves and Aasimar, tieflings, etc. But it's the fact that they bring so much to the table is why they kind of populated everything. And do you think things are better now? Do you think there's enough changes with the other races to kind of compete with that as an option?
Absolutely do. Very much so. And in fact, human as it is here reminds me a lot more of 3.5 human, because I'm pretty sure 3.5 human also their big thing was that, other than getting to pick their stats, they got multiple starting feats.
Okay.
And also, that's the important thing. Hold on. Important thing we forgot to point out about the feats that I really appreciate.
Oh, go for it.
They're leveled.
Oh, yes.
Not only are they level locked, but there are some you can take multiple levels in. Yes, I love this. This is just like 3.5, also had stuff like this. And I think that was one of the nice parts of it. You just you like this? Get more of it. Or, hey, this fixes the problem of there are feats that are just absolutely busted and there are feats that are crap garbage.
Mm.
By letting everybody take parts of the feat pie, and man, my brain did not like saying feat pie. That has put bad images in my brain. Shake off the weirdness. Okay. Everybody gets to partake of that now. As opposed to, you can pick ability scores or feats, and then you open up what are my feat options? And there's 50, and then, new players go, I think I'll just take the ability score increase. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, if you know what you're doing, you're like, I want this feat, and this feat, and now I'm more broken than anybody else in the party.
Well, that's also a thing, too, I guess I should bring up. Feats were an optional rule beforehand.
Yeah, because feats were so much of what 3.5 was, which might be one of the fears for the future. Is this going to suffer from the same downfall as 3.5, where your entire existence is defined by feats? And taking the right ones? Maybe. But, like I said, having not everything tied to it and having the leveled feats, and they seem a lot more kind of varied and not game breaky currently. I'm hoping that we're not going to fall into the downfall of 3.5.
There's a lot that I am loving with it. I mean, we're definitely going to go into more detail when we get to the feat section. But one thing I enjoy from Pathfinder was the idea of knowing that I was getting my ability score improvements and my feats at the same time. It wasn't an either or anymore. Especially since feats for us in 5e seems like such a huge game changer for your character.
Oh yeah, depending on the feat, depending on the character you're playing, like, God, that can make or break a build.
That said, I will throw in that one, the classes having their, I'm drawing a quotation mark you can't see, their special traits, and those working like pseudo half feats, I think are incredible.
Yes, that is a great way of doing it.
That said, one issue I had that is a personal thing for me personally. Why is it humans still have the ability to get an extra feat?
I'm guessing it's just that's kind of how it's always been. But here's the thing, right?
Mm.
I am not bothered by that from a mechanic standpoint because it's a first level feat.
True.
This was way more busted before when it was like any of the feats, because it just let you immediately get some very good things for your character. Oh, you're playing a ranger? Immediately take the feat that just lets you, not have, immediately pick up sharpshooter. Can't do that anymore. I'm assuming if sharpshooter's even still in the game, it's a much higher level feat.
This is going to be a wombo combo for you as a question, but a lot of people rightfully will say that there were feats that easily dominated the game. Sentinel, Lucky, Pam being 3 that comes to my mind right away. And with the idea of knowing that now we have one version of D&D that's supposed to last us for the end of time now, how worried are you that power creep might go into the game pretty heavily?
Well, considering that feats are more like 3.5 and the downfall of 3.5 was book and power creep, somewhat concerned. Definitely a concern that I have for the future.
At least you're honest.
I mean, I'm like a kid in a candy store. I looked at this and went, oh my God, they're making it like 3.5, even more than it already was. Hallelujah. The feats are back, baby.
Again, it's so much fun seeing your reaction to it because it's like it's such a culture shock.
For you, this is new. For me, this is old school.
But I imagine that's the case for a lot of people too.
Yeah, I'm like, we get feats starting off, and we get leveled feats, and everybody gets to take feats at different levels, and there are level gated ones. Yeah. That you used to get, like, there were feats, like class feats that were gated behind like your 10th and 20th level that were like amazing, and you only got to pick one. And that was something that was so hard, is trying to figure out which one of those amazing feats you wanted to take. I'd like that to come back. It's like, all of these are great, but you have to pick one. That could be build defining, you know?
Mm. Well, I'm gonna save this before we for when we get to the spell section too, but it's something I always thought about with spells also. Just the idea of how insane certain things can get, where I'm gonna throw in the current nightmare fuel for DM, Silvery Barbs. That spell.
Oh boy, there's been a lot of discourse over that one over the past year.
Should have been second level, I'm saying. But when it comes to things like that, so did it not like kind of worry you, the idea of knowing that we could end up getting spells or even a class that could completely just break the game as a whole? And would you
go out on a limb and say, I don't think we are gonna get any more classes? Bold of me to say, but I think they had an opportunity to like do, kind of bring Bloodhunter official, and they didn't, probably for good reasons, let's be honest. The balance of that is all over the place. I think Artificer might be the only new one we get.
So
Because I should also make very clear, Artificer isn't new to D&D. Artificer has like always been a thing, or no, well, not always, but it's been a thing in previous versions of D&D, especially in the Eberron setting, which of course was where Artificer was introduced to us before in 5e.
Right.
So I don't. Artificer was always kind of missing from 5e, and now that it's here, everything feels complete, in my opinion. I feel like any other like elite specs from 3.5 could just be added as, sub specs.
Well, you just answered it, but I'll go ahead and ask the question anyway. One thing that's get brought up a lot with people with 5e is it doesn't feel like there's enough full-on classes to cover the type of niche playstyles that you may want. And one of the ones that will go into... Yeah?
I can somewhat agree with that. I'll let you finish your question, though.
Okay, you got an opinion. But when it comes to those, like one being before the Artificer came out, knowing that your only intelligence-based spellcaster was the wizard, and knowing that still, if you wanted, for some absolutely weird reason, an intelligence-based fighter, you unfortunately have to just go with fighter with an Eldritch Knight. Just get the sub. There's no class based around it, like a psionic.
Yeah. Whoa, we have psionics now.
Ass ups.
Yeah, but I'm fine with that. I'm very fine with that, especially with the friggin' psionics handbook in 3.5. Oh, trust me. It's a good thing they didn't try to make psionics its own class. That was a nightmare of a book. Probably the worst book printed for 3.5.
Well, I mean, all right, I'm going to ask you this, too. How do you feel like they handle Artificer, bringing that in?
I think Artificer is ridiculously strong. Almost too strong.
I will also say that this question isn't, like, one I scour for. This is also a question coming from a guy who personally couldn't... Like, I looked at Artificer, went, this is too much in my face. I'll deal with it later. And just finally picked it up like January this year and went, oh, this is the most busted thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, it is. It is. I am amazed that is the final version that they put out, because, yeah, it is. That's how I should have answered your question of, are you worried about a busted class getting added to the future? And I should have answered with, we already have our busted class.
But I would say, too, that's like, in comment section, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I have to wonder how rare of a pick Artificers are at the table. And I wonder how much of that would come into just people looking at the things it has and going, there's so much here, it overwhelms my brain.
Finally got an Artificer. The current thing that I'm running right now, we have an Artificer in the party.
Nice. How they do it?
They are definitely dominating when they can actually hit. They're not having much luck with their rolls.
I'm guessing they went Battlesmith.
Yes. Actually, no, they went Armorer.
They're having trouble with the rolls on Armor?
Armorer.
Okay.
Have you looked at Armorer subclass?
Oh, yeah. I looked at Iron Man. I know about...
I was about to say.
Let me punch you and have disadvantage forever.
Get to play tank. Tank is Artificer.
Oh, let me just haste spell myself, get Blur ready for the next turn, and just keep punching the guy, being annoying. But yes.
Yeah, there's definitely that fear that we're going to get stuff added down the line that upsets the balance in a way that could be even more devastating with how they're positioning feats. But let's be honest here. There's already been so much stuff to upset the balance. This isn't a new thing.
That's true, but at least when things broke the balance in 5e, I feel like a lot of people at least always said, well, we're all set to enter this edition's life.
True. Yeah. I guess with the One D&D though, the intent is if it's fully digital, they can keep tweaking it.
Now I gotta ask this. Then that goes into my next question. Thank you for the segue. Would you be okay with the idea of them hot fixing certain things with the classes, with the races, so on, so on?
If it's a good change, then yes. That's kind of all I can really say.
To that I say, who's really to say? Because I will say, I think with the playtest and things like that, when it comes to 5e, personally, I think it's either we'll look at something that's being playtest and go, all right, cool, we made these other things that are really strong. Twilight Cleric is really strong, so our new UA Cleric, let's nerf that to the ground. Let's show the fun thing first, and then we'll power crept it all the way. And it almost feels like it's afraid of things that came prior. And I wonder if, in this same scenario, if they were to look at that and go, hey, this other cleric or this fighter sub that exists, this Echo Knight that exists, let's just weaken that, or for gaming terms, let's nerf that to put it in line with everything else.
They might. They might very well do that. Honestly, I've always been of the attitude of if something's busted, make everything else busted. But oh boy, that I'm probably not the best person to approach about things like that when that's my standpoint.
You want more of my fun analogies / examples?
Oh yes, please. On
the shooter landscape, or even with games like Overwatch, the philosophy for games has always been, for every one thing you nerf, you buff two. So yeah. Would it probably be better would you be okay knowing that, let's say you found a class that you love, what's your current class? What's your main? I have to ask.
I do like Cleric a lot.
Okay, any specific sub? And why is it Tempest?
Not really. I kind of just like playing all of the Cleric.
Okay. But even if I were to say, like, take my Tempest and just go, well, Tempest is doing a bit too much. Being able to fly when you cast thunder spells is a bit much, and knocking people prone in 15 feet. So instead, we took away most of those extra benefits, and we added some of those to the other clerics that are in the sub. I feel like, personally, that'd be a nice way to just handle it, where I don't think the people playing the class will be that upset. Versus now, where you'll look at a fighter sub and you go, I'm never touching a Purple Dragon Knight. That class doesn't exist.
Oh my god, Purple Dragon Knight. Cool. Yeah. Forgot. You're right, you gotta bring me back. It's the World of Warcraft problem, right? I don't know how much you know about World of Warcraft.
None.
Okay, so World of Warcraft has base classes and subclasses, right?
Okay.
And a big problem in that community has been the argument about how much of the class should be defined by the subclass and how much should be defined by the main class. That's kind of what I'm going to postulate to you here. How much of Cleric should be in baseline Cleric and how much of Cleric should be in the subclasses?
Personally, I feel like we're already at a good balance for that with 5e, where I feel like the parts of the class that you want to be the class itself is there, and the subs are stacking on top of that, like giving it an entirely different flavor to go along with those things.
I agree.
But okay, there you go.
stuff that might get changed.
Mm-hmm.
My computer wanted to go into sleep mode there. That would have not been good.
I've been touching mine on occasion, don't worry.
Yeah. Also, two things. One, we gotta try to pivot back to talking about races
Oh,
because
we're going to.
we barely got even through human. And two, are we still recording?
We are. I checked.
Awesome.
I've been checking
All
like
right.
every 15 minutes.
But yeah, it's kind of a closing statement. I agree. I think we're at a good point with that. But of course, with your proposed changes, that would start to upset the balance a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the sub-specs get a bit less unique in exchange for making them a bit less busted. But then maybe every cleric will start to feel like every other cleric.
When everything's special.
Exactly. It always comes back to that. Yep.
Yeah.
It's okay when the sub-specs have something cool that makes them stand out, as long as people actually still pick the other ones.
And that's kind of why I always say the subs need to change the actual base a bit to add some kind of unique flair to it. Because otherwise, you don't see too much of what you want out of the class from it.
Like I said, that's why I have the philosophy of don't nerf, buff the things around it. It's like, oh, this sub-spec has something really cool that makes people want to pick it. We'll add something really cool to the ones that people aren't picking then.
In terms of an RPG, I'm always on team buff everything else instead of nerfing the game that people like. That said, it does feel kind of worrisome that by just bringing up everything higher and higher, you're hitting these DBZ levels of, okay, well, what's even reasonable anymore?
True. I will say the theory that they are just going to buff everything is high, considering that now that we've seen the new monster stat blocks, monsters have definitely gotten buffed.
I love it.
Big time. So that makes me feel like that is the direction they're going to go. But, Ame.
Yes.
I want to talk about Ardlings.
Oh! Bird, or dog, and elephant, and every other animal you can think of, people.
Because Ardlings are cool, and I did a double. What's the expression here?
Double take.
Double take. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
I did a double take when I was scrolling through this document the first time and saw Ardling and was like, "Whoa! Did Asamar get a name change? No, this is something totally different.
Entirely new race.
And we have a precedent for this, because while Ardlings are a entirely new thing to D&D, the Gardenals that they're derived from are not.
Oh.
They have roots in older editions.
Oh,
and yes, there were literally monsters in D&D that were, and they were celestials, and they were called the Gardenals because they were guardian animals. Gardenal.
Oh my god, I get the reference.
These were kind of a representation of, I guess you could say, various faiths like Hindu or ancient Egyptian faith. The idea of god, celestial beings being reminiscent of animals in some way.
Mm.
And it was a neat concept. It was fun. It was definitely the weird, kooky D&D-ness that I love. And then they just kind of vanished after 3rd edition, and they're back, I guess, because we got a entire race that is the playable version, that is the Asamar version of the Gardenals.
So I gotta ask, is basically delivering everything you wanted from it?
As someone that didn't know I wanted this, hell yeah. It does something that Tiefling does later that we'll get into when we get there, but I love that you get to pick the different plane that you came from, and that kind of influences somewhat your appearance.
Saw that heavenly and idyllic.
Yeah, not just your appearance, but your stats, is the stuff that you get, the spells.
Mm-hmm. The idea that it changes thaumaturgy, like guidance, your different ones. I enjoy that. And I'm trying my best not to put too much of my own opinion in these things, I swear. But so when it comes to the Artling, I love the idea of trying to take these things people want and putting it all into like one race bucket. So now if you want like an alligator man, you want like an elephant man, all that's here with Artling. That's great.
Yeah, And like I said, this isn't out of left field. There is a precedent for this in older D&D material. So,
which makes it even better. That's it. Don't hate me when I say this. I don't like them because it creeps me out.
well, like, hold on. Let me get. I understand the fear of Dog Head Man, but
and BoJack Horseman, past us either.
But hear me out. Like, here's a horribly low res picture of a Hound Archon from 3rd edition. This is a friend. This is a.
Why am I even looking?
This is a friendly dog man. This is a friendly Cardinal.
He looked like he came from Cerberus.
You're gonna hate what they look like in the older editions, then.
Oh my god.
Also, I know, great for the audio only podcast that I'm throwing up. Look, you're all responsible adults. You can Google search Hound Archon D&D.
When I do the YouTube version of it way later, I probably will add the pictures up. Probably I need to remember, but
I get pictures of the Cardinals in general, then throw up a bunch of them, prove that I'm right.
I don't think it's bad. Like, I know entirely this is a me thing, but it's just kind of something about it just rubs me the wrong way. I don't know what it is.
I love it. I love it. It's weird. It is. Well, we're getting a Planescape setting. We know that now, which I am incredibly giddy about. Like, I assume you are not familiar with Planescape, being not a newer really. Player.
Gotta explain it.
I'm not going to.
No.
I want you to experience that for the first time. I will say there's a little game called Planescape Torment. I would highly recommend checking that game out. It is set in that setting, and it is one of the best written games ever made, in my humble opinion.
Well, chat, whenever I get around to it, catch me live, twitch.tv/ZombieNews. I'll have that up there.
I would watch you play Planescape in a heartbeat.
Because you piqued my curiosity with that.
But anyway, be excited for the Planescape setting. It's probably going to be amazing. And I'm sure that these weird animal hybrid people are going to play a role in that when it does come. That's a fun fact. Planescape is actually the setting that made tieflings popular.
Oh, my former favorite race. Actually, that's kind of, or my new favorite race again now.
Yeah, because prior to Planescape, tieflings were not playable and not incredibly popular as a concept. That there wasn't like demand for them to become playable.
That actually blows my mind.
I want to say Planescape might have introduced them as playable, but it might have been all the way until 4th edition. But they did specifically tie it to Planescape when they were made playable. So
now when 5e released, was Tieflings the brand new race for 5e, or was that Dragonborn?
There wasn't one.
Oh.
For 4e there was. It was Dragonborn and Tiefling. I'm pretty sure we're both like new. To the player's handbook starter, but for 5e they just kind of stuck more to the roots with it.
Okay. I mean,
because Dragonborn was a 4e thing, so
this is kind of why I get more excited for this too, because like the idea of experiencing a new edition coming out, or I keep calling it edition, and the idea of experiencing something brand new with the community as a whole is like what I expect people to go through when they're expecting a new Doctor to be announced for Doctor Who. It's kind of nice to be in the middle of all of it.
Okay, now that we've praised the Ardlings, Dragonborn, I hate it.
Hold on, we'll hop on. We'll hop on our shared hatred for what they did to the Dragonborn in a second.
Good.
But I was going to say, casting a 3rd and 5th level spells, or starting at 3rd level and 5th level, that's so interesting to me that like the thing we were just talking about the leveled race, let's say having that tied to class level and giving them more things they can do. I'm kind of surprised that we stuck with it for this. Or I'm surprised we made it something like a spell.
Yeah. I mean, this was kind of the solution to that in 5e back when 5e came out. And I think it's great. Yeah, just if you have a race that is typically more powerful, just let the players have some of that power, but later at a time when it would make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really care if it's spells as long as they, let you choose the modifier. Like you said, there is still stuff like Barbarian that make that not great, but it's better than it was, where you just got told what the casting modifier was, and you're like, oh well, I'm not that's my dump stat, so oops.
But I do almost wonder if it would have been better to have more things such as like orcs or my Eldarans. I love the elves who could teleport, where just giving them a full-on new ability, which they kind of have with damage resistance, resisting radius damage. It's a nice, really great extra addition to them. But
you have to remember that anytime you do stuff like that, it is a massive buff to that race, because if you make something a spell-like ability, it cannot be counterspelled under the rules.
This is true.
And counterspell has already been kind of drugged through the dirt with the monster changes, since monsters get spell-like abilities now for a lot of their spell attacks. So,
but with that said, I think that's like everything we have on Hartley. So, Dragonborns.
I don't even want to talk about this one that much, because okay, for all you listening, look at the Dragonborn in this document, all right? Mm-hmm. Now pull out your copy of Fizban's that I know you have, and look at the Fizban's one, and tell me that there were problems with that required them to nerf it in this. That's literally all I have to say. It's just the Fizban one was perfect. It gave us everything we could want. You had the 3 different choices. The breath weapon was fixed. It's like you have everything that you could possibly want from that Dragonborn. And then this one is like a weird, ungodly fusion of some of the parts of the Fizbans and the OG one. No. Don't do that.
I just want to add, and I'm here looking at my next question on the list. Just people felt like Fizban's Dragonborn for perfect. Like, as you're just, I'm just like,
I have to say, I beat you to it.
Through that.
You don't even have to push me down that line of questioning, because I agree. I looked at Fizban's Dragonborn and went, this is what I wanted. This is what I want. I know what I want, and this is not it. I'm just gonna keep using the Fizban's one.
I do find it odd that we went from. I do think this is better than the PHB version of Dragonborn.
Yes, it is. But you know what? It's not better than.
That's a book that came down 3 months ago.
Yeah. And it does kind of feel a bit greedy. It's like, no, you have to buy the Fizban's book if you want the good one.
Well, that goes to something I want to, without saying the obvious, well, yeah. How much did you feel like some of the decisions they made were like financially motivated?
It's kind of hard to say, isn't it? Because we don't even know how much this is going to cost. So,
but one thing that has gone through my mind, 5e is by far the most popular editions they've done. It has attracted more players in this one edition than the entire legacy of D&D going up to it. And a lot of people believe that the issue with coming out with a 6th edition is that now you're risking losing a large portion of that giant player base, or most of them might want to just stick around for that 5th edition. So by
let me tell you something. We are still not at the level of book bloat that 3.5 had.
That's horrifying. I have $1,000
Yeah.
worth of books.
Oh yeah, with 3.5, there were books coming out like every month.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and imagine, and it was power creep too. They power creeped it, so you had to keep buying the newer books to get the good stuff. So
Well, so this wasn't even like a topic at hand, but I'll bring it up. One of the issues I had with Monsters of the Multiverse and a few more things that came out recently was like I felt like I was spending money to essentially get what should have been like revisions and updates.
Yeah. They barely added anything. What? There's like one new stat block, the dolphin. How much money am I paying for that damn dolphin stat block?
30
And not only that, you're paying. So I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but you're paying. You weren't even able to buy the book on its own for a while. You had to buy it in a bundle of 2 books that you definitely already had. It's definitely financially motivated, hands down, and it's definitely one of my fears for the future.
So without the obvious, yeah. Oh, that broke me. Well, that's something I do wonder what's going to happen in the future, because I do heavily believe that's why we're getting One D&D versus just flat out 6e. And I'm hoping and why 5e is going to be so backwards compatible with this. But I do hope / want to just strongly wish for them to focus on trying to do new things with this without being afraid of alienating people.
Yeah. And I think that's why they went with the One D&D instead of a new edition. That it seems like we're probably I'm going to get more of the buy a book containing a lot of stuff you already have, but it's because it's the newer stuff. But it looks like with how this is going to be, hopefully it'll be relatively easy to adapt stuff over.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't seem like it's going to change anything so significantly that you will not be able to use 5e homebrew or existing material.
We'll have to see, because one thing that has been on my mind is they said it will be backwards compatible, as in you can bring your 5e stuff into it. They never said retro compatible.
Yeah, true. But I guess the implication is, you will not be able to continue doing the 5e stuff. 5e is essentially at its end. It kind of already was. You could say that the Mordenkainen's book was the first ending of that. Because it's the point of we're getting books of stuff we already have but changed, which seems pretty ending to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I also was hoping that with some of the things we got, they were just trying to streamline it a bit better for when it goes into this new edition. I'm gonna keep on calling it edition, just accept it.
Well, we'll see how compatible stuff is going to be once the classes come.
Well, that said, continuing on though, moving on from that Dragonborn.
The dwarf.
So, a big complaint people have right now is that apparently the dwarf, when you remove its subs that it had, you kind of lost a lot that came with it, with mountain specifically. I feel like those traits were taken away.
Let me look at get my D&D Beyond open here.
It's not already open. I'm hurt.
I know I'm a fiend. I haven't made a dwarf.
You haven't made one like whatever, or just
yeah. I did once, but it was a long time ago. Okay, here.
The main things are with the armor proficiencies. We're giving dwarves no armor proficiencies really kind of seem odd
Here's the thing, though. I think going forward, I don't think anybody's getting armor proficiency as a racial thing. I really do. I think that's part of the new design philosophy, and I am not opposed to that. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if we saw armor proficiency training as feats that you could take.
But now,
really,
now I have to ask you then, are you okay with the idea of having, instead of tying more things to your race, instead of tying it more to your background and your class itself?
Yes, very much so. I think I've made that apparent, but yes, I definitely, yeah, I definitely like that. Like I said, it kind of lets you play whatever race you want, and it makes more sense to me that your background is going to determine your skill set and your training more so than your race, right?
Mm-hmm.
That part never really made as much sense to me. It was like, oh, every single dwarf has armor proficiency. It's like, well, but what if you were raised like
a druid?
Yeah, then why would you have that? You know, yeah, you wouldn't. So I like that it's tied to background more, and it's another thing of I think people are kind of forgetting with the changes to the races that we already have. I'm pretty sure all of the Mordenkainen racial changes already got rid of that stuff as well.
Mm-hmm.
So really, I think it's just kind of the product of the times moving forward. Because I mean, I look at this dwarf, I think it's great. You get toughness now instead of having to take it as a feat. You have tremor sense.
I was going to ask you about the tremor sense specifically. So, one big feat people have right now is the dwarf also being ridiculously overpowered with stone cutting because of the tremor sense.
I'm sorry, the resilience was the one that was the feat, not the toughness.
No,
I got him in reverse.
Tough is you get 1 extra HP.
Yeah, but the old one got that as a racial. Resilience was the one that was the feat.
I see. Yeah, but how do you feel about the whole having tremor sense up to 60 feet for 10 minutes?
I think that's awesome. That, as somebody that like was never that interested in dwarf, that makes me interested in dwarf. It's like, yeah, you have cool mountain sense. That's cool.
To me, and this is still also having a 5e mindset in mind, not knowing how they're going to do things going forward. But the thing that goes in my mind is when I look at an artling, which is I can fly 30 feet and then crash to the ground if I'm still in the air as a bonus action, or I can sense everything standing on my plane of existence within 60 feet of me, tough from Avatar style.
Yeah.
It's like, one of these just feel like a little better than the other. Subjective, but
yeah, the flying. Well, I mean, it was the same problem with the Aarakocra, right? Like Aarakocra trumped all because of the flying.
Aarakocra's issue was, yeah, it flew, but it flew so well.
Yeah, it also, not only did it fly, it had really good flying, which makes sense. But from a balancing perspective, oh my god, how did you think this was okay?
There are certain things that came from Monsters of the Multiverse that I was okay with. Like the race nurse, because there were so many people who didn't allow Aarakocras, Yuan-Ti, Kobolds.
Yeah, if it's to the point of where they're like not even allowing it, then you need to nerf it. Because... And yeah, the Yuan-Ti was insane before that.
Immune to poison. Have advantage on all spells.
One of the most common damage types in the game. And magic? What?
I wouldn't say it like that.
I would.
Ridiculous.
It was nuts. I remember looking at that before they came out with a new book and going like, this is official? They think this is okay to print? I remember homebrewing races and being like, and I was like, oh, I want to add a regen, but that sounds way too powerful. And then I looked at
Do you look at
Yanti, and it was
Yanti?
like, oh my god, the stuff, the stuff they thought was okay to just have in, like, oh.
So with me, I always do my best to avoid like putting anything off the table, banning anything whatsoever. I've had, I think everyone except for our DM we had together with me and you played. Every DM I ever had has banned those races from play, from my own personal experience. So it's like, oh my god.
Yeah, definitely glad that they did that.
So welcome changed.
But yeah, I think I like the dwarf. I do. I really like it. I think I like that the hill and mountain distinctions are just like names now, because there wasn't a huge difference between those.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like with the ones that are significantly different, they're just making it a whole new race, like the Durgar, which used to be a sub race of dwarf, but with the Mordenkainens, they just made a whole race. Now, I like that more.
I have to ask you, how do you feel about having, instead of having multiple different subs, 30 different elves and dwarves to look at, to choose from on D&D Beyond, now you just have your subcategory inside of it? Does it feel more streamlined to you, or how are you feeling about it?
Oh, it's so nice. Looking at the way that they did sub-race, because the way they do sub-races with the new lineage stuff, it hasn't changed. It's just the way they present it is so much better.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of being like, oh, you have the base race, but then you have to pick a sub-race if there's a sub-race. It's like, no, you could literally just say that as, oh, this gets a lineage thing. Here are the lineage choices. Pick one.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing, but the way it's presented is so much better.
Now, while we're on the topic of lineages, before we hop on Elf, we gotta mention the obvious missing one here. Half races are, on a technical basis, gone, but also better than ever.
Yeah, because now you just get to like pick the one that you want, and then just you get to like kind of smash them together, right? Mm-hmm. What does it say? It's like
you can pick and choose from each category going through it. So your creature type has to be humanoid, I think. But you could choose the size between one of the two parents. You could choose the speed between one of the two parents. The lifespan's the average. And then your traits. And you could double check me to make sure I'm not wrong. That's me saying on top of my head.
So that is once again, I feel like we might be getting into a case of oh boy.
Say it.
Here come the I'm definitely doing this for roleplay, but I just happened to pick an incredibly potent combination of traits.
I do think half everything is the new human.
It is the new human, you're right. Oh, and it's so bad because now everyone's going to be the special snowflake player at the table, too. Oh, no. Oh, no. Why have you cursed me with this realization?
You're welcome.
Well, yeah. It's gonna be a time, but what can you do?
Just leave a bad taste in your mouth.
Yeah, I understand why. I always thought that having the half races as actual whole races was kind of weird. Because I mean, the reason that they did it in regards to orc was because orcs were considered like so bestial at that time that it wouldn't make sense to have one playable. So the half orc was basically your ability to play an orc at all.
Mm-hmm.
But then they just added the ability to play orc eventually, so it's like, oh, well. And then in 5e, they started with a half orc, and they also added orc, so yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying what it is. People want to play orcs. Like,
People just want to play an orc. Yeah, let people play orc. And so, like, it feels like they're getting rid of that half races, but then they're not.
like I said, they got rid of it and they made it better than ever.
Yeah. I mean, I always played half elf just because half elf was busted. Half elf was great. Oh, I get the cool elf traits, but I also get to like pick my stats to a certain degree, and I get really nice boosts and other things. Yeah, heck yeah, I'll play that.
I before Multiverse came out, my go-to, I just kind of played whatever I wanted, but it was always either an Aasimar or a Tiefling. And then Multiverse came out, and I was like, oh my god, Adarans are like bonus action teleport. My teleports can charm people, where I can warp other people instead of myself. That's great. Would I play anything else?
Yeah, I almost kind of, I mean, I hate it. I hate how they're doing the half races now, but I almost kind of love it because now I want to see the kind of stupidity that can be brought to the table.
Oh yeah.
It's like I'm daring you. I'm daring everybody out there to make the dumbest combination of statistics imaginable.
The moment we get, I mean, it might end up being my Arlene, but the moment we end up getting an actual Aasimar Tiefling's the first race I'm making.
Yes.
Literally the goal.
But let's talk about elves.
That's it, elves, yeah.
Elves are a lot cleaner with the lineage. They got the elf stuff. It's all there, and then it's just a nice clean. Everybody gets a cantrip. You also get an extra thing unless you're high elf, and then you just get to swap out your cantrip, and then you get a 3rd and 5th level spell. Awesome, great. I love that. Super clean, makes sense. It holds true to what I think elf represents. Have no issues with this one.
So, forgive the wording. This is other people's wording and not mine on this one. But when it comes to elves, the issue with them has always been for people. They're both too token and not token enough.
Token enough, yeah.
And I have to ask you, do you feel like we're kind of fixing that issue now? Do you still feel like they kind of have that Lord of the Rings fantasy scrubbed away from them finally? Or do you think that's still just...
I think that's why people like Drow so much, is because Drow weren't that way. I mean, look, if you have high elves and wood elves in your setting, they're going to be Tolkien. Unless you're making them like the cool beast elves where they're like cannibals, you know. And it's like they're the magic boys, right? They're the magic guys and gals. That seems to be the role that they're fitting here. You get the magic hands. That's fine. That's we have a race like that. That's fine. I don't think you should be trying to escape from Tolkien, considering that all of D&D is just Tolkien. And Tolkien plus other mythologies kind of crammed in there.
Agreed. So I want to let you take the realms a little on gnome, because I've never touched gnome my entire existence.
Oh boy. Yep. Certified gnome expert here.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna try to pilot this one, but I know what I can say is I know someone was saying that this is pretty busted because
cunning.
Yeah. Yeah, advantage on intelligence, wisdom, is charisma saving throws. That's very strong.
This goes into the theme we brought up multiple times now, which is, how strong is it really now?
Exactly. It's like we kind of have to know how the
content.
I'm looking at gnome, by the way.
Okay.
I want to point out that we're dumb because the gnomish cunning thing has always been there.
Are you serious?
Yeah, looking at it right now, you have advantage on all intelligence, wisdom, charisma saving throws against magic. Oh, but this one just says in general. It doesn't say against magic. So that's the buff. The buff is it doesn't have to be magic anymore.
Oh my goodness.
That is a buff. Wow. Okay.
You know, like I'm legitimately I'm thinking like if I ever had a gnome in one of my games, or I even heard people talk about like a gnome breaking a game, and no, I can't say I have. To be fair, I do personally feel like intelligence saves have always been the super scary ones, but they almost never pop up. Versus wisdom and charisma is always kind of being the I failed this, now I'm annoyed. Type fails. Not the I failed this, now I want to cry, like failing a dex or a con save is.
Yeah. I like the rock gnome like weird trait thing. That's pretty neat.
Knowing mending and precipitation?
Yeah.
It's so odd. I'm ready to move on. I got nothing to say.
This is not good content, but what can we say? We
Neither
don't play
of us
gnome.
are gnome players.
I have been told by a gnome player that this is a buff. I'm going to believe that the rock gnome is a buff.
From all my research, I don't think I even heard anybody bring up the gnome. So take that how you will. I will say, moving on from it, or ask before we move on from it, the fact that most races can be both small or medium now, like humans, I think that is so good.
That's so cool. I can role play like a halfling with tiefling heritage, you know? Because obviously, tiefling is just somebody with an infernal, well, not even infernal anymore, but we're gonna get to that.
We're getting there.
Let's just say demonic. No, let's say outer plane heritage.
There we go.
That is not of the celestial variety. And that doesn't have to be a human, and it never made sense that it was only human. So, roleplay halfling. You know, halfling tiefling. Love that. Gnome tiefling. You can have humans that are shorter than gnomes now.
I mean, I'm going to go a step further. Dwarves are all medium. That makes me
smile. Dwarves have always been medium because they're chonky. They're thick folks.
Good.
I don't worry. I thought that I always found that strange as well, that dwarves never counted as small, but that's how it's been.
I mean, there's certain like small things, well, pun intended, that's there, but other than that, I still like the idea of it. I like the idea of having like the options for certain races.
What do halflings get here?
So halflings get luck, and they always had that. But just the wording on it, the idea that it's a D20 test now, we're going to get on some of like the rule changes towards the end. But
also, real quick, subrace is gone for halfling.
That is the thing I was going to dang you.
Sorry.
As I look at my questions, the stout halfling is gone.
Yeah.
People have an issue with that and feel like halflings took a hard nerf because of it. I do think not having different variations of halflings feels a bit odd to me.
I agree. I think you should have just had the lineage for this as well.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the idea is like they were never lineage enough. It's like a stout halfling is just a thick halfling. That doesn't count as a different race. That's just a thick halfling.
Which is fair.
Yeah, it's like you want a stout halfling, just put points into charisma and
but
play
my
a war.
poison resistance.
Yeah, you don't get the poison resistance, which is the big one. Honestly, I would just give them the poison resistance in general.
Same. I think that's
But
like the one thing is kind of missing here.
yeah.
That said, I love the fact Brave just puts a smile on my face.
Oh yeah.
And there's some saving throws like to end or avoid being frightened.
Halfling's cute. For all the OG D&D folks out there, we all know that Kender is better though, and we're getting Kender now in the Dragonlance book. So
I'm like, can't wait for Dragonlance. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, we're not gonna get into that though. That could be a entirely its own
episode by itself.
I'd have to do a lot of advanced reading on that because I know I can cherry pick stuff of Dragonlance, but I don't know enough to go into. I can geek out with the rest of them about Raceland, Majere, and Lord Soth and such. But
outside the book, I don't know much. That's like the big thing with me on that end. And even then, I read it casually.
Yeah, I think we kind of covered halflings here.
Oh yeah.
They lost they lost lineage, which is a shame.
I mean, we're gonna touch on orc because there's a lot to say there.
Yeah, let me look because obviously no more negative stats. That was already a change though from the revised.
I haven't really looked at was it Eberron that added orcs or was it Monsters in the Multiverse?
The original Volo's Guide to Monsters added them, but they have been heavily modified from that because they used to have a negative to intelligence.
Good lord.
Yeah, the implications of that are
big. But that said, I do really enjoy kind of like the flavor behind it a bit. I do like the adrenaline rush, taking a dash as a bonus action and getting 10 HP from it. Dark vision is always just dark vision. Powerful.
I don't get adrenaline rush. Adrenaline rush is a half orc thing, I'm pretty sure, isn't it?
Well, one D&D version. Oh no, wait. Original, quote unquote original.
I'm opening it up. Yeah, I'm opening up half orc. I think this is literally like a fusion of like. Okay, no, half orc doesn't get adrenaline rush. What got adrenaline rush, or is that new? And why did I think they already had that?
No, I have it open. They have adrenaline rush on 5e.
You?
I'll link it.
Mine's not showing me that. Is it because I'm looking at the Volos one? Is it the Eberron one that you're looking at?
Did you not remove Volos after they discontinued it?
Okay, so it's the revised one. Yeah. Then that's why. Okay, that explains the confusion. So okay, I'm not dumb anymore. I promise. Let's compare these. Yeah, they still have adrenaline rush. They still have powerful build. They still have relentless endurance.
There's nothing to really compare. It just kind of gave us orcs in the PHB.
Yeah, and that's fine. I thought that orc was a very good race, especially after the revisions. Strong, very strong. Kind of everything you'd want from it. Okay, now we get to talk about the one I've wanted to talk about.
Before we talk about the most hyped one for both of us, and like the clear winner, and the clear winner.
Damn it!
Do you feel like I'm imagining / hoping they're going to give us more races out the gate? But do you think that both the races cover a good enough basis to kind of give players a little bit of everything that they could probably want out the gate for a new quote-unquote edition?
I didn't expect that we'd be getting any new races, so I'm already pleasantly surprised.
Well, I mean, I will say this much. From a naive point of view, I just expected us to get all the races we had already for 5e.
Yeah, same. That's exactly what I thought. And then I saw the new one. I'm like, oh, okay.
But I mean, I'm still imagining that, like, since it's like PHB, this is what we have right now going forward until they give us new or quote unquote new old ones.
Yeah. The new old hotness,
The new
as
old
they
hotness.
say.
But how do you feel about everything we have? Do you think people bases are kind of covered?
Yes, I think we have enough races now that people can wait for new ones a bit longer.
Okay.
I'm not in a mad scramble for new races. Honestly, I'd rather have more new subclasses than new races at this point.
Yeah, actually, I'm with you on that too. Well, actually, let me ask you this, and this is my own question. Would you want all the subclasses we had from 5e to come over? Would you rather them scrap that system and just bring us brand new things?
I'm fine with the subclass system, but I think there's some that they need to scrap. You can probably think of the first one off the top of your head. I'll give you a hint.
Or beast?
I was about to say, I'll give you a hint. It's a fighter one.
Look, I give it either or, purple or beast.
Fun fact: Purple Dragon Knight was an elite spec in 3.5 that you had to spec into, which is why it got carried over into 5e. Except it's not good in 5e.
Trip down the stairs on the way over. There were certain things they did, such as and this always goes to Tasha. Tasha might be the best book.
Probably, yeah. I really liked Tasha. It kind of blew me away with how amazing that was. It's like, hey, remember all those Unearthed Arcanas that we put out over 5 years? We grabbed most of them.
Here's all level, and here's Artificer.
yeah. That boggled my mind when they did that.
But even with that too, they the one thing they did that doesn't get enough credit, revised Beastmaster.
Yeah.
It's actually okay.
Yeah. I'm happy. Yeah. I hope we see more revisions to Ranger.
I hope we see a revision to Monk.
Yeah.
Personal thing, But continuing on with this and finally hopping to the one we've been waiting on. Just go ahead and talk like mad with Tiefling.
All right. Hold on one sec. So okay. I'm gonna be biased here because I love the concept of the friggin' the Yugoloths.
Go ahead and explain.
All right, so Yugoloths are a very underutilized thing in most D&D. They are the neutral evil fiends. So devils are lawful evil, demons are chaotic evil, Yugoloths are neutral evil.
Okay.
They have a weird kind of... They don't have a unified appearance, much like the demons or the devils, but they're essentially the middlemen in the war between the devils and the demons. They kind of sell their services to whoever and information and such, and they're really just right scum. I love them.
Neutral evil will do that to you.
They have a cool fox dude too, the Arcanoloth. He just looks like a evil fox demon nerd. There's one that looks like an alien, like a gray alien.
So, with that thought, I'm guessing Catholic is like your favorite one out of these, huh?
Oh yeah. Because that's the thing is, before this, tieflings were specifically of infernal heritage, which means devils, and it was only devils. This is all lower planes bloodlines. Which can be.
That's such a chef kiss.
Oh yeah, and I like this way more than the 8 different friggin' tiefling sub relating to the lords.
The ones that, from my own experience, nobody ever really touched. I don't know why. I think it was just because of the lore that was tied to them.
Yeah, and it was also so much too. There was just a lot there, and it was not organized well, and it was scary looking at that. And here it's nice and easy. It's like, hey, do you want your ancestor to be a Yugoloth? I should also mention that the Chthonic one isn't just the Yugoloths, it's other neutral evil outsiders
They
as
had
well,
a
like Night
succubus and an incubus in there too, didn't they?
and Night Hag. Which means we can finally play one of my favorite weird races from 3.5, which was the hag spawn, which are male, like what happens when a hag gives birth to a male instead of a female.
I didn't know this was a thing. Okay,
it is. We have a way to play actual hag spawn now through the Chthonic background. One of my favorite characters from Neverwinter Nights 2, the expansion. I don't remember what it's called, but one of your party members is a hag spawn, and he is like he's like constantly horny for your character. It's hilarious. And that's another great game, but I'm not going to get into another side tangent. Yeah, needless to say, I like this. It's a lot more like the elves and, our new race that I already forgot the name of.
Artling.
Yeah. Where it's just you got the three, they're all together, they're nice, they have all fun things to them.
So, the big talk from a lot of people, and I'm going to throw my own name in the bucket because I'm there kind of with them. Abyssal, with how we know things now, is far too strong.
Oh, yeah, because the resistance to poison. I will say it is resistance, though.
On top of gaining access to whole person.
Yeah, which, as we know from the new rule set, has been revised. I don't even know if we're going to get that far, I'm going to be honest. I don't have much more time. We're going to come back to talking about the feats, and maybe we'll gloss over the rules stuff, but that might have to, if you're willing to do a follow-up, that might have to be later.
Hey, part 1, part 2.
I only got, at most 10 to 20 minutes. Apologies.
Oh, no worries. I kept you over, way longer than I expected, on top of a bonus 30 minutes.
Hopefully we'll have a lot of usable material. But yes, the whole person is strong. I mean, darkness is strong too, though. But
yeah, but to me, darkness, knowing that unless you have some kind of sight to see through it, everybody's kind of at a disadvantage. Versus whole person giving everyone around you guaranteed crits on the person who can't move.
Yeah, that it's very good. Yeah. Look, you cowards, I know that it's the optimal choice, but I don't care. I'm gonna play my hag spawn.
Which is fair still. But it is one of those things where I kind of hope they look at some of the things they get and just go, let's just bleed those into the rest of them too. Let's just give all three of them the great things and keep the small niches to themselves.
I will say though, resistance to Necro and Fire also very good.
Oh yeah,
those are pretty common as well.
The Fire one especially.
Yeah, and I feel like if you're playing a campaign that's undead focused, which a lot are,
that necrotic would be so beautiful.
Yeah, you're gonna be hecking everything up. Obviously, you won't be able to use the chill touch, but I'm hoping you have other tools at your disposal to deal with that.
To be fair, how often are they gonna be using poison spray? But that goes through the background. They have some questions that go into it, but for the most part, it's the simple things you would expect to have for your character. How do you relate to this background? How does your character feel about these certain aspects? So on and so on. I want to hop right into the choosing one first level feat and actually think about some of these feats, which we won't go in order. I'm definitely going to hop around. But as you said, I don't think there's a personal single bad one.
Yeah, they did a really good job of being even if you're not using one part of the feat, it gives something else that's really nice.
Mm-hmm.
The one that I was looking at, for example, was is it healer? What the heck is it? I'm having a hard time finding it now. Of course. Not Acolyte. Artisan. Just pick one. I'm not going to be able to find it.
Well, let's actually go through. I'm gonna go back and forth between ones from old Feats people used to love and think were overpowered, and one people that were useless, and see where they are now. Starting with Lucky.
Lucky got a bit of a nerf, but also a bit of a buff.
Honestly, considering that it went from, in my mind, a feat that was almost a must-have. Like, you're playing the character, no matter what character you have, pick up Lucky if you don't know what feat to get. It's just that good. And now it's, you get Lucky and you make a roll, you can give yourself advantage. If they make a roll against you, you can give them disadvantage. That's kind of how it should have always been.
Yeah. And I think they realized that, which is why they made the change.
I don't know if you ever had anybody do Lucky shenanigans with your group, but the idea of, from the old wording, if somebody gives you disadvantage, you use Lucky, and then you can pick any of the 3 dice you want from your choice.
Yikes.
Yeah, Lucky had problems. And that's kind of why I think that's doubly why I'm okay with this change. Because you took a feat that almost encouraged, what would be the correct word for it? Bad behavior. I can't think of what else to really call it.
Yeah. This is the perfect example of they just tightened the wording a bit and made it more clear what they wanted the original design intent to be. And it's good. Lucky is still great.
Oh yeah.
But it's not exploitable in the same way.
I feel like if it's a feat you love, you can still love it easily. And making a first level feat on top of that, it's like, that's insane to me.
I realized my mistake. I was looking at backgrounds like a dumb. Healer right here, battle medic. You have a healer's kit. You can expend 1 use of it, tend to a creature. It expends 1 of its hit dice, and then you get hit points. That's good. And then you can re-roll your heals. It's an alright feat if you don't have healing, and it's an amazing feat if you do.
So now people don't gotta be like me and just be a cleric who used the healer feat to do their healing.
Yeah, and I like that. I like that it's stuff that can typically benefit multiple people. Like I said, with the Magic Initiate, you get spells from it. So instead of it just being like, oh, it makes your spells better, it's like you get spells as well in order to make use of it. You know, with Musician, you don't have to be a bard to make use of it.
I will say, since I don't have you for a lot of time, and we could fanboy on Feats literally all day, since you brought up Magic Initiate, I kind of want to at least get your thoughts on that huge change as well.
Oh, the Magic. That would be a good closing thing to talk about the Magic.
So, beforehand, when it came to our spells, as you're aware, we had Adjuration, Conjuration, Divination, Enchantment, Invocation, and the list goes on and on and on. Now we just have 3 lists.
And here's the thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not convinced that those are gone.
Huh.
I think because here's the problem, right? If those are gone, what the heck are wizards subclasses gonna be?
Well, this goes back into something they mentioned that was on the back of my mind from the show, which is, why does the wizard have to be a class when every class can bring their own wizard focus?
I guess so. Yeah, that, I don't know. If these are the big 3, as is being indicated, I kind of don't like that. I think it's too simplified. The different schools was cool because it kind of led you in a direction of your fighting style, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Do you focus on, trying to confuse the enemy? Are you just one of those mages that loves just, destruction and raining down fire? Do you, go down the route of creation and summoning? do you anti other people's magic?
I
I thought that made a bunch of fun play styles, and I'd be really sad if that all kind of went away because we want to do the more simple, like 3 schools now.
There definitely is a fear with simplicity, but I also will say, consider this. There are classes that exist, like Rangers, where I have a D&D server where like I rant with people. And one thing we were doing recently were like our top 10 picks for spells for like every class. And we went through the Ranger, and just like, why would you pick any of the Ranger spells?
Yeah, they're not great. But
now knowing that they have access to the Druid spell list entirely, the same as that things that they will look at, I almost feel like classes like that, or even paladins who, why would I use a spell? I have my smites. Where now they can look at the cleric spell list and go, okay, I got access to the best spells there is now.
I guess that's kind of the path that they're going, is the classes will still feel unique because of their traits, but the spells are more standardized.
Mm-hmm.
I can see that, and that might be good, but the purest old school in me is like, I don't like that they're getting rid of the schools of magic. I really don't like that if that's what they're doing at all. I think that's just unnecessarily destroying a bunch of flavor.
So I will say this much. They said there are 3 main spell lists. So there could also be subs within those spell lists.
And that might be the ones that we know and love.
Mm-hmm.
There might be even more now, split between the new divisions.
I will admit, I didn't sit down and fully look through like every spell where it used to be and then see how it lines up. Cause that's a day's worth of work that I didn't feel like
I feel like we could literally do a sequel podcast where we actually take some time to go through all the feats and all of the spell categories.
Easily.
And put that, just talk about all of that. And that might be fun. That might be something.
But I also have 9 other interviews today.
Exactly. So I will simply leave on the topic of the spells. It's once again, I have no strong opinions until we get the actual class updates. But I will say one thing that I think is cool is that it lets you do, like with the high elf, as we've seen, it literally is like, oh yeah, you can swap it out with any arcane cantrip.
That's so good.
Yeah, and it's so much easier than saying you can pull it out of the wizard list, which is something that's constantly shifting and changing with new subclasses and everything. It's like, no, if it's an arcane spell, you can take it from there.
So they kind of gave me this a little bit, but I wish I would have seen one specific cantrip. I love the idea of seeing Vicious Mockery in there for the arcane list. Cause at least now I can I look at that and I can theory craft, I can actually have my bard take on like the full wizard or sorcerer list. And go crazy. You know what isn't in here? It's the same one I'm thinking about. Go for it.
Eldritch Blast.
Yep.
So I'm guessing Eldritch is probably just going to be a feature, as it probably always should have been. Because I'll tell you, I did have some shenanigans with people grabbing Eldritch Blast that weren't Warlock and just doing some dumb with it.
Can you get into shenanigans if you're not a Warlock with Eldritch Blast?
Not a lot, but I feel like that's something that's going to get changed. But I feel like all this is telling us is we need to come back and talk about this whenever we get the part that has the classes.
Well, I'll end these off by saying this. They said we will get a document like this once a month until One D&D releases.
I'm going to have a lot of opinions then.
And
a lot of feedback.
Anything you're looking forward to seeing in the next list they put out?
I really hope that we get classes next. Really hope, because like I said, I have a lot of fears and concerns that would be alleviated or deepened if I could look at the classes.
Then my final question I have on that: what class are you looking forward to looking at the most? Like, what class do you have to see before you pass judgment on it?
Cleric.
Okay.
I was gonna say fighter, but I mean, like, fighter. Yeah, I guess fighter or cleric. I kind of hope that they, like, one of the things I want them to do is just make Battlemaster baseline stuff for fighter. I think that would help the other subclasses.
I tried to react like that. Sorry, but
because like Battlemaster is just so cool. It gives you so much stuff to do as a martial class.
That was something I thought about. There are certain things, there are certain subs classes have, and I'm going to bring up Warlock because Hexblade exists. Where does it go? Maybe Hexblade Warlock should just be the base Warlock.
But here's the thing, though, right? The reason I say that is like magic users get so much that they can choose between, and then if you're playing a fighter that isn't Battlemaster, it's like, I hit the enemy and maybe do another thing, maybe.
And I try to ask more questions, but one thing people mention all the time is that martial classes are significantly more straightforward and narrow versus spellcasters. And would you like to kind of agree with that? Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. But it's a little too straightforward. It's boring, in my opinion, a lot of the time to play fighter if you're not playing Battlemaster.
Agreed.
Paladin's a bit better because, you know, you get actual features built in, like your smites.
But at the same time, you're just doing attacks with a heavy attack, basically.
Yeah.
But all that said, Ian, I appreciate you for coming along. Thank you for showing up, man.
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of rambling and getting off topic, and I hope our dear listeners can at least pull something of value out of this. I'm sorry.
So, you haven't seen many of our episodes. Fun fact. We have a segment that I do at the end of the podcast that just called Rants. And it's like 20-minute longs of like the off-topic rants we got into.
I feel like the rant section of this was the entire podcast.
That's what makes it so fun.
Thank you for having me. I am a hungry boy. I wish to consume food and not pass out.
That's fair enough. Everyone. This is just the first of many. I have a few more of these that you're probably going to hear spliced together in between different ones. We'll see. Either way, either this is 2 hours you're listening to by yourself or 10 hours. Thank you all for listening. I have these go up every single week. You can come back to the YouTube channel maybe on Saturday. Check it out. See what's happening. Follow me on Twitch. I'm always doing things on there. It's a great time. Fun times. Games. You love it. You see it. And, of course, if you want bonus segments or anything else like that, there's always the Patreon. Feel free to follow me on it. It means a lot, guys. I'm broke.
Every week? That's so much content.
There's tons of it. It never ends. And so the YouTube channel works the same way. Remember to upload every week.
So generous. Yeah, yes. Cut it. Cut the feet. Cut the Thank you again for having me. Had a great time.
Anytime. Guys, see you in the next episode.